You know, one of the most important things that I've learned in my life is to accept who I am and what I'm about, all of the flaws that I have. And it's been one of the best things that I've done. It's been a journey to figure this out, and I don't think it's done, but there's so much to learn about who I am and accept who I am. So I don't know if you know my story. So I started out in kindergarten. And actually, it starts out probably earlier than that. But I remember having my legs nailed to a board because when I was, I don't know, about 4 years old, 5 years old, my legs were crooked. And so one of the ways that they dealt with straightening out your legs when this was back in the 80s, they would put your feet on in some shoes and nail the shoes onto a board. We still have them someplace. And as you slept, they were supposed to straighten out your leg somehow. And then when I was in school, I remember being the last at absolutely everything. There was maybe one other person that was a little better than me in some things, or a little worse than me in some things, but often I was the last in everything. I remember doing these races all the time. That our school was very big on racing, on sort of foot racing. And it was a small school. There was 80 students. We were in the country in about 4 hours from any single university that was around. So really it's very much a blue collar town. It's a pulp and paper mill. And it was very, very rural, but we would do these races, and I remember being the last person in the race every time, and it was a real struggle for me to do any of that kind of stuff. And in academics, I remember being the last person, the person that was left behind. Turns out later on in life, just very recently, I found out that I was struggling with ADHD when I was a kid, but that was not a thing that people sort of knew about back then. So I was in special ed until I was in grade 5, and then I developed this sort of feeling that I really sucked at a lot of things, and I wasn't all that great compared to a lot of people. So when I came into high school, I didn't necessarily have that many friends. Actually, I probably didn't have any friends for a year or so, where I just felt very alone, and I felt like I was very much like behind, and I wasn't very good at anything, and I couldn't make friends or anything like that. And so as I grew, I developed this sort of thick skin, and I began to sort of think about, that the rest of the world is so much better than who I am. But after a point, I have no idea what happened, but I began to believe a little bit in myself. My dog just took off. She's chasing a bird, began to believe a little bit in myself. You want to see her? Actually, here's Izzy, right there. Izzy, say hi. Okay, sorry about that. So I began to believe in myself a little bit more, and I studied really hard to get into university, and I was fortunate enough that I studied extremely hard. I remember studying nonstop, day and night, all the time to get into university, and I did, and I actually got into a really good university in an engineering program. But I still felt I had this belief in myself that I was behind, or I wasn't good enough compared to everybody else around me. And then I did the exact same thing. I wasn't doing very well in university in the first year, but then I started studying ridiculous amount. And if you talk to any of my friends that are from university in my undergrad program, they'll tell you about that. That's all I did, was study. And then after that, I got into a good master's program, and then my PhD, and I became a management professor. And all throughout the process, I've always felt, and I think it's become part of me, that I've felt that I'm behind, or I can't do things, or I'm problematic in some sort of way. But I've become to accept that that's part of who I am as a person. That I do struggle with things, and I do have this sort of insecurity that I deal with, and probably you do too. And as I've been doing this project, this reciprocity project, and being more open with it, and being more public with it, notice that a lot of people actually resonate with it. So I do think that there's lots of people in this world that feel the same way that I do. And so I've come to the conclusion, and maybe you have this conclusion too, that absolutely everybody else sucks in this world too. And we all have our things. We all have our limitations, whatever that is. Some people just don't talk about them. And some people are just not open about those things. And so if I can get us to do one thing, and hopefully we can get one thing done with the Reciprocity Project, is to be more open and be okay with who we are. And to realize that our flaws, whatever they are, or whatever we think about, they're not flaws, they're not limitations, they're not things that are holding you back. They're just your unique things that make who you are. So if I can get you to get out there and be okay with yourself, I think I've actually done my job with the Reciprocity Project.